I saw all of you online. I saw your faces, but I want to come and see if this is real. Getting a mentor or a coach. It is very important for your development.
Hi, and welcome to the latest episode in Leadership Blueprint. As we know, this podcast is all about leadership and transformation. And so we're really lucky today to be joined by Magdolin Boukhary, aka Maggie. As a Saudi female working in the space of HR, Maggie's worked for some amazing multinational organizations and PFO portfolio companies and driving some key talent, culture, and transformation initiatives and more. And I think today's going to be a really exciting one to hear some of those initiatives that Maggie's been working on and also what the future holds for everyone involved. So Maggie, thanks so much for joining us today. I'm going to hand over to you now for a bit of an introduction from yourself, and just again thank you for today, and yeah, looking forward to this. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for having me, Oliver. It's been a while since we've caught up, and I'm really appreciative of this podcast, and I've watched a few and I'm really intrigued by the caliber that you have on these podcasts.
Thank you. So yeah, definitely over to you then. I'll let you give us a bit more flavor to the introduction, a bit more detail, and let's see what got you from where you are to where you are today. I mean, that'd be great for starting.
I guess I can start with a passion that I have towards the function of HR. It started almost 26 years ago, right? So quite a long time. It started even previously by being at a very young age when I used to visit my father at the office after school, and I'd sit under his desk and I'd watch him do the interviews, and I'd be like, and I'd start questioning him about, how do you do this and why do you do that and why did you ask this question? And I was very intrigued by, how can somebody ask such questions? And in the past, interviewing was much different than where we are today. Basically, it was more bold. It was more, it wasn't very approachable, basically. And he had to give me justifications as to why he was questioning people the way he was towards the role they were applying for. And it started from there, basically, the passion for people, for HR, for capability. And I think it all came up through my values that I built all together. So I have 5 basically, and one of them is uniqueness. It's meaningful work, which is having an impact. It's accountability, authenticity, and basically embracing challenge, right? And uniqueness comes by understanding that every person is unique, and some people with their influence come and bring the best of other people out, right? And I believe that's how we become unique individually. Meaningful work at work, have an impact at work. Basically, I look at it as what does everything that I do impact the others around me and impact the organization around me. So whether it was in school, university, doing my side hustles, and also in corporations as I grew forward. I embrace challenge. I have to be my best enemy in terms of making sure that I challenge myself, challenge my abilities, challenge my skills, and hence also challenge others. As I grew, challenging others I was quite how can I say this politely? I was quite harsh with my teams as I grew because I expected that level of them, right? Because I was there and I wanted them to be like me. And then I understood that, Maggie, you embrace uniqueness, you embrace authenticity, you embrace accountability. So why are you doing that as you grow? And so I learned to become more accepting of embracing challenge with people and accepting them to understand where they are and where they want to go. Authenticity. I'm very honest and truthful about who I am as a person, what I want to do, and hence I appreciate that with other people. And finally is accountability. So it's different to responsibility. I am accountable for what I do, what I say, how I hold myself, and also my team, right? There are various responsibilities that we do, but accountability means there are consequences for what you say and what you do, basically. It took me a journey of 26 years, to get to here. And it's been quite a fruitful one. So various aspects of this journey I can walk you through as you ask your questions today.
Yeah, and I think, look, it's really interesting to hear. It started as early as, when you're a younger lady, and being there with your father, and I think taking that uniqueness. I think that's something throughout all of those points you made there was, you need to be true to yourself, and I think that's why you and I have got on, and I think that's probably why you've done very well in terms of driving some of these cultural initiatives. Is how do we get that uniqueness across? So talking of some of these leadership lessons, then, what would you say have been maybe some of the key lessons that you've taken away so far, and how have you used some of those lessons from earlier in life in some of the projects you're working on at the moment? What have been some of those takeaways that you're implementing now?
Okay. So in leadership lessons, I think I have three main ones that I can usually discuss with other people. But there
Hmm.
are learnings or takeaways that I can also walk you through as we go forward. So the first one is embracing change through demonstrating, resilience and agility, right? In the HR landscape and also in the business, it's always evolving, right? And so we must be open to the new ideas and 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 adapt to them basically as we go forward.
Yeah.
There are things that happen in organizations which we do not like or we do not want to do, basically. But basically,
Hmm.
having that resilience and agility and that maturity to embrace all of that is very important. Managing complex challenges such as restructuring, cost cutting, economic downturns, acquisitions. There's
Yeah.
so many aspects in HR, especially where it's like, you're going to come and do the ugly work for us, HR. And
Mm.
how can we be very open and have candid conversations with people about what's happening and anticipate anxiety. My second
Yeah.
leadership lesson, is probably about, embracing data-driven decision making.
Mm.
When we all in the past, when we all walked into HR, and I'm talking about, over 20 years ago, right?
Yeah.
When we walked into HR, people never walked into HR having, data and numbers
Yes.
at the top of their head. It wasn't something that we thought was going to be. It's not something that we signed up for, basically, right?
Yep.
And eventually, it comes up that no, it's something that you have to sign up for if you want to grow and become and go somewhere. And over
Yeah.
the years, I believe that I had to make informed decisions and objective decisions by using this data analytics and also the number crunching and understanding how to build proper budgets, proper workforce planning, proper decisions about talent deployment and not, right, and who goes first and who goes last, and who should be paid this and who should be paid that. And these are
Yeah.
conversations that we usually don't like to have, but I think, and I'm not taking out the element of humanity here, but I'm saying that they both go equally together. And so there's data then, and there's also the number crunching that we have to do, and then the people aspect, and they have to have the harmony together to be able to reach the level that we want to reach to. And I think we shouldn't be scared of them as HRs, especially going forward. My
No,
last one,
100%.
yeah.
Sorry.
So my last one is none. Don't worry. So my last one is building trust and credibility, right?
Mm.
And that is something that I hear a lot of people talking about, non-credible HR persons. I don't trust HR. I don't believe in HR. I don't like HR. But I think
Mm.
I've worked really hard to avoid that comment from people, especially about me as an individual and about teams that I've worked with and I've managed throughout my career. And I think it's all about, embracing your expertise, okay, and your competence. So you've got to be really good at what you do and really understand what you're doing. I think it's also about, having active listening, okay,
Yeah.
and really engaging people in what they're trying to say. So understanding what they're trying to say. And finally, it's not about being just fair. It's about being righteous at what you do. So the world isn't fair, right? But there are things in equity that we have to take in place, right? And finally, it's my transparency. I think I speak my mind, whether it's to someone about how positive they've done or how challenging they have an aspect of, basically, and the hard conversations.
Yeah, and I think, you've touched on there, obviously uniqueness earlier on. You've talked about engaging people, you've talked about listening, and I think the underlying thing over all of that is the data part. And I think if you can take the human element, but combine it with some data, that it does enable you to have those difficult discussions. And I think it's something which we've had previous podcast guests mention around, you know, businesses need to be training people on how to have those difficult conversations. It's not something that people always want to do. So how does HR support that? And how does HR play that active role in, either training a manager to have those conversations or HR themselves taking those conversations forward? And I think, again, data transparency, if you can bring those things to the table, then generally conversations are much better received by people. So no, it's really great to hear you saying those things. I think, again, it's why you and I have got on, and I think why you've done well, in the career to date and things, for sure. So
Thank you.
if you were to then look at, let's say, transformation, because we've touched on it a little bit there in terms of how HR has transformed in its supporting of business. What have you seen as some of the key changes in transformation? We've said data, but is it a particular piece of data that you found really useful in transforming HR, or is it as business as transformed with tech that how HR has needed to adapt to that? What do you think's driven? Is it data driving HR? Is it tech driving a decision? How has HR kind of navigated through that?
I think it's having the courage to understand that data is not your enemy and it's not going to
Mm,
overtake your job, right? We have and IA, and we also have, um decision intelligence, right? Decision intelligence has come into the world before we even talked about AI, with pilots like the autopilot back, right? But they needed the
yeah.
pilots in the plane to actually make the decision of the technology that's come through them. And I think if we understand that, technology has been there for a very long time, many people have learned how to embrace technology. That's going to be easier for us. I think it's the fear of, will I lose my job? What's the human
Mm,
element? And I get these things from, especially from my younger teams. It's like, so when we use data, what's my influence? How am I going to make that? What will I have to say? And I'm like, your say is making up the story. And I'm going to talk more about, storytelling in HR. It's, you have the
mm.
data, but how do you transform this data, transfer it into a storytelling to convince the people of what you're trying to do or what you're trying to say?
Yeah, no, 100%. Storytelling with data is probably the most powerful tool I think anyone can have, because it's not just a gut feeling then, but it is driven by, like you said, information. Okay then. So in terms of a slightly left field question, but we were speaking about this before we jumped on today. When COVID came along, when we had work from home and stuff, how do you see how is HR and yourself able to continue that influence? There's more flexible working now. HR was more face to face, let's say, and now that has changed. The world is evolving. How do you see HR's role as you continue to have that influence, but maybe it is on a Teams call. Maybe it is, people that you're never going to meet. They live in another world. They work remotely full time, maybe. Have you seen that's changed how HR approaches some of these things?
Definitely. And I think it took some time for people to understand that, the working model is should be embraced post COVID. Now I've seen some
Mm,
organizations which said, no, 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 we're back to normal again. But the world hasn't
mm,
become normal again. There's a new way of doing things. And I
yeah,
believe that, HR should work with management to help them understand how to how to overcome the obstacles that we have with hybrid working and remote working. It's basically looking at, developing skills in terms of how they look at productivity, performance management, and the rest. I've had issues with my team saying, yeah, but I need to see the employee face to face, the candidate, when I'm interviewing them. I'm like, why? You did it during COVID. Why not now?
yeah,
And I think it's the habit of, I want to travel, I want to go, I want to come, but there are reasons that we have to justify why we're doing things which weren't justified in the past. Okay. And that's
yeah,
what I said. It's looking at, technology, data, and the human aspect and what we can do with all of these. Right.
mm,
And I
mm,
mean, it's just very different. So for me, I'm a leadership. So I look at situations, I look at what I need to do with them and when I need to do with them. Recently, I've had a candidate that came and said, you know what, you saw me online. I saw all of you online. I saw your faces, but I want to come and see if this is real. Would you mind if I come to the office? And I was like, that was going to be my next step. Is like, I'd like before people come and say, I've accepted the offer, I'm okay joining you. I want them to come and
mm,
see, the culture we've built in the organization. I want them to come and see, how their desks would look like, because it's different.
yeah,
They need to make sound decisions. So they have the data of who we are, what we're doing, our numbers, our financials, our revenues, blah, blah, blah. But they don't know if, how it's going to look like for real. And it's okay if you want to come and do that. I've had people that signed offers globally and also locally that have come and said, I want to look and feel. Sure, you can get
mm.
a look and feel.
No, 100%. And culture is the biggest factor that I think is it's a continually evolving state. And I think, how do you continue to embrace that? And that leads nicely into, technology is changing how we work. And that's, yes, remote, but also in automation, in terms of different processes. And so again, I think, businesses need to be clear on, we are currently here and we're going for a transformation journey to there. And I think that's what's really key, and where HR is playing a really big role in, making sure that storytelling, again, as we mentioned, is as informative as possible, so that you're getting the right person for what the business looks like tomorrow as well. Because it's all good and well for if can the person do it today, but can they do it for what you want to be tomorrow? And so, mentioning HR and mentioning tech, what do you see as potentially the biggest disruptors, let's say, within HR at the moment? Or what are the things that most excite you? Or what are the things that don't exist yet, but you think if they could, they'd be really I'd be very excited if somebody developed this. If someone's listening and they want to go and develop X, Y, Z, I think this would be great for the wider HR community. Is there any sort of bits of tech or process that at the moment you think, do you know what, if we could maybe have more data in this area or that area, that would be really beneficial to us?
I think that lots of people have done a lot of work in terms of developing um, tech applications and platforms for us. I think what we need to do is have more of a collaborative effort to make people understand what can this mean for them better. So there are various platforms. So the rise of intelligence automation is there. So there are chat boxes. There's the platforms for talent mobility. There's the platforms for recruitment and AI and recruitment, basically, and deploying skills. I think what we lack today between you and I is and the audience that are hearing us is the lack of collaboration and courage by HR people to actually reach out and understand what does this mean for them. So, for example, for me, when I talk about rise of intelligence automation, I look at, for example, what does a chatbot really mean for an organization? Right? Because IT use it as a help desk. Right. So why not HR use it as help desk too? Right? I think with having this, it makes our role more, having a more work a meaningful work and impact at work, basically. And that's one of my values, where I look at, we become more of a strategic advisor. We become more, we free up our HR professionals from the day-to-day transaction of works and have them look at, added value, input, impact driving activities, basically, where people still think that, the bigger my empire, the more people I have, the more work I'm seeming to be doing, the more that shows how important I am. But it's not. It's the value added impact that you have at work that helps us basically go from one step to another and growing. So and again, when you want to enhance the talent capabilities, I think there are various AI provided technologies in terms of recruitment, and you understand me what I'm talking about. We were talking about this earlier about the different technologies and assessments we can use, but people, I think, are scared of what's my say in this. What if I make the wrong decision? Well, we've always made wrong decisions and right decisions. I think we just need to man up to them, basically, as we grow and understand that, some decisions, and this comes with experience and practice, basically. So it's not like I'm going to get the data, I'm going to make the decision, it's going to be the right one every time. Not every time.
Yeah.
Because each of us are unique, our individuals have our own basically way of understanding, articulating numbers and technology. We think we should leverage more on the tools that we have. So these tools can basically help us identify, develop, and deploy talent, right? It just because we have an evolving business need all the time, that we need to comply with that and understand how that helps HR move from one step to the other to getting there, and then eventually, boom, there they are. And I think it's all about credibility. So, as we embrace this technology, it's also about how credible we are with this technology and with the use of this technology. Because people think, okay, so now they're going to manipulate the technology and manipulate the numbers, and it's like, it's not. It's all about creating, trustful, credible HR professionals on the ground and in the organization. And remember when you talked about the part about what was it? Sorry, we talked about the part of having the challenging conversations, right? Whenever I walk into an organization and they say, okay, fine, Maggie, you're going to sign the warning letters, you're going to sign the dismissal papers. And I'm like, and I'm also signing the promotion letters. I'm gonna have the good talk and the bad talk, you know.
Yeah.
And if you want, and I always like to partner with my leaders. So myself and the CEO and the employee will be there for the promotion letter, and we'll be there for the dismissal letter. And I like to give them the opportunity to talk to their people about it, because it's not just having not just HR being the bad guy, but it's basically it's a decision made. It's a constant decision made by both leaders, the business and the HR, and that's the outcome of the decision. Whether it's a promotion, whether it's a dismissal, whether it's a warning, a tap on the hand, basically, it just depends.
No, 100%. And I think it all goes back to, again, the credibility part. And I think, again, people being clear on the expectation as well. And I used the example of VAR in football. Everybody thought VAR would come in and be this, there will never be a single mistake ever made again. And you go, well, that was never going to be the case, because it's still a human element. But, it's gone from something like 80 odd % of decisions were correct before VAR. And now it's meant to be something like 95% of decisions are correct. But the perception by humans is, because there's still some error, that actually it's worse. But apparently the data tells us actually the decisions are better. There are less mistakes being made. But what is our expectation? What is the user experience? And again, I think that goes back to previous podcasts as well. The user experience part, the storytelling, is probably the biggest bit that HR can do. And I think Mohammed, in the last podcast where he spoke about user experience and the journey he's been on, he was more from a sort of marketing background, but it's interesting to see the user experience part. I think is exceptionally key, because if you don't have that messaging right, then you will end up with difficult conversations won't have the right outcome if people don't understand going into what they're expecting. But it's interesting. I mean, it's very interesting to see where it goes. So
It's the
if
same
you were
thing here.
to
It's the same thing
yeah.
here. When you talk about HR, you're talking about marketing with user experience. We talk about employee experience. So there are various projects across many organizations, many leaders that I know, that worked on enhancing their employee experience for the organization and also for the people in the organization. I mean, some of the things that I've done basically have cut down, for example, on cost savings of a number of certain headcounts in various functions. There are 20% time effectiveness of uses of managers' time, basically. And these are various aspects that that we can leverage on. So you have employee experience, user experience, customer experience, and many of us have to complement what the others have learned from their work, so that we can adapt that in HR, and that's how HR will be well.
Yeah, no, 100%. And so we've said there that technology does have a positive impact, but it needs to be addressed in the right way. What do you think are going to be the key dynamics in the years to come that need to be addressed to continue that positive relationship between HR and technology? What do you see as those sort of dynamics that need to continue to be evolved and developed?
I think it's understanding the business, right? Understanding where we're going, not fearing technology, basically, and having the proper partnerships.
Yeah.
So, and as I said, if we look at the people that have used technology prior to us, for example, and so when we look at the user experience with marketing, when you look at the different aspects of finance, for example, how they've used it to leverage on their work, we can actually have the courage to understand it more and be able to use it more.
Yeah. Okay. So as you've gone through your career, we've said that obviously you've continued to have that unique voice, but equally, the strong listening capabilities, the empathy. But over time, as HR, as business has evolved and changed, what are some of the lessons that maybe back in the day aren't as relevant to today? So if you're sort of looking back at the start of your career, what are some of those lessons which are still consistent to today? And what are some of the things which over time you've said, this is something we used to do it this way, and now this just doesn't work at all, and we've had to evolve and adapt and change? I think it's a combination here of what's been a timeless piece of advice you could give to people that they should be doing, and if you're still doing it this way, you need to change because everything is changing and we need to be on the front foot for that. What are some of those sort of lessons learned and future sort of insights?
Okay, so I think the lessons learned is that over the years, I was very impatient, somehow inflexible. And, and my maturity level wasn't like that. But it's something that I've embraced from a very early start, which is basically having sponsored mentorship. So I've always looked for feedback to help me grow. And I think over the past, let's say almost plus 18 years plus, I've established, my learnings of how I think I should be, and how I think other young ones should also focus on. So it's always about, um, demonstrating that you have an ability to embrace change. Absolutely. It's having a broader industry acumen and business acumen, right? But I'd put them in four different areas for me. And it's basically, fostering collaborative partnerships. So, we may not like to work with the internal audits or the finances, or the sales or the marketing, but to be able to grow, to be able to sustain, the betterment of the organization you're working in today, you have to foster these relationships. You have to understand the pain points of others to help them, especially in HR, for example, because in HR we used to lack understanding the pain points, and we thought we had the solutions for everything. Right? And it's having these, these interests and engaging in conversations and understanding pain points and translating that into activities that would work for the business is important. But even then, so it's all about, checking in on them. Is this what you were asking for? Is this what you wanted? But not developing something, coming and saying, okay, here you go, that's what it is, because it's not going to work that way. I think the second lesson that I learned, and I'd always encourage people to look at that, is also demonstrating courage and integrity. So, you have to have the willingness to have these ugly conversations or challenging conversations. You also need to be a very situation leader, or look at things from both sides, and having a more open perspective, right? And basically, it's, as I said earlier, it's your transparency, your accountability, and basically your maturity. I used to sometimes look at some of my bosses, and I'm like, and I'd walk in and I'd be boring about something, and he'd be like, okay, let's look into the situation. I'd be like, why are you so calm? And he'd be like, and then I realized as I grew, and as I grew as a leader, basically, I realized that yes, you have to be poised, you have to be, subtle, you have to understand, you have to be humane about things, and you have to have the humility to make sure that your people understand it. Even though you're squirming in your seat and you don't like what's happening, and you believe in what they're saying, but there's a way of doing things that isn't done the way the young ones think it should be done, and have that, that characteristics in them. I think the third one is basically building, um efficient or effective communication and persuasion. And we talked about storytelling. So, active listening, incorporating diverse perspectives, having that storytelling ability to in your data-driven decisions, okay? Always helps. And I think it's also tailoring your message or your style to the person or the situation in front of you is also very important, which we like to do that as young ones in our beginning of the career. And finally, it's maintaining a continuous learning, you know, um, uh, continuous learning prospect. I mean, I have a growth mindset, and I believe that, everything that I do, I must learn from. Otherwise, I'm not going to embrace the person that I want to be going out in the future. And people say,
100%.
well, I don't have the time. I come back from work, and I'm like, there's so many various small learning bites that you can do, whether they are podcasts, whether they are, webinars, whether they are actual training and development courses, whether they are, just stretch assignments, or even just listening or observing people.
Yeah.
We get to learn things.
It's self-reflection, and I think whether it is reflecting on a good or bad work situation, why was it good, why was it bad, how could it be done better? It could be a very simple thing, switching to audiobooks and listening to them in the car. I think there's a lot of ways where people can do little increments, and there's a very famous graph of, if every day you do 1% increase over a year, that it's exponentially more than you would expect it to be. It's I'll put a link to the graph in the comments of this podcast. It's a really interesting graph of 1% better every day over a year. It's phenomenal impact, and I think it's sometimes underappreciated by people. They expect that change is huge, whereas it's actually continual small increments. So continuous learning, as you mentioned, is super key. You mentioned there about mentors. How, if somebody's thinking of getting a mentor, and I'm a big believer in them and I've had them in the past as well, how did you go about picking one? What would you say if somebody's trying to say at the minute, I want to look for a mentor, I think it'd be good for X, Y, Z. How did you go get one, or how did you assess, is it the right person for you? I think that's always great to share with people, how did it work for yourself?
Finding a mentor is finding somebody you believe in initially, right? So believability has to be there. The other one is having the proper relationship or charisma between each other, and really understanding where you want to go. So my first mentor, or my first coach, basically, I was a very young junior HR person, and he was the CEO and the chairman's coach of our organization. And I walked one day up to him and I'm like, listen, I can't afford you, and my company's not going to put me on your scheme, right? But I would like be taught by the best, and I'd like to learn from you how I can develop. Now, he has never charged me except a cup of coffee every time we meet, right? And until
Lovely.
today,
Yeah.
he doesn't charge me. Until today, we've had this relationship where I see him in an airport lounge, or, or in a conference, and we have these mutual conversations. Today, I do have paid, of course, coaches and mentors, but
Mm.
it's basically having the ability to have the courage to speak what you want and how you want it. And when we talked about, practicing something every day, you know,
Yeah.
as a coach, I need a coach, right? And as a coach, I don't tell my candidates what they need to do, or my coaches what they need to do. I help them swim through, their ideas, and create this culture aspect of, I can do it, I'm able. And look at the sports coaches, for example. I watch lots of sports coaching. And when you see how much that persuasion is, that you can do better if you just do two push-ups, four push-ups, five push-ups, 10,
Yeah.
100, 200 push-ups, and that's how they grow. So it's not like I'm gonna walk into a mentorship program and say, okay, fine, we're gonna do it today. I've had people say, oh, Maggie, I need your magic wand, and I'm like, I don't have a magic wand. Okay, I
Yeah.
have you and me, and we have that and it's a journey. And so mentorship and
Yes.
coaching is a journey that we need to embrace. And I think it's very important to look at credibility of the coach or the mentor. And you need to find this believability in them, basically. What have
Yeah.
they done?
No.
And they're good for me, basically, is another one also. So they may
Yeah.
they may even be the right fit for you, basically.
Yeah, and I mean that's important. It doesn't mean that they're not a good mentor. It's just maybe they're not the
Mhm.
mentor for you. And I think that's
Mhm.
yeah, something that again goes back to listening, and I think the personal awareness as well. So no, interesting. Um, so if we were to sort of, what would be maybe the most, of the aspiring leaders that you've worked for, what's maybe been the best takeaway quote, or the best lesson that you've learned, like a one liner that you would say, this has been the most important thing, or the most useful thing, or something I always remember or reflect back on? Is there some, you don't have to say the person, but is there like a particular lesson that you say, this has always put me in good stead, whatever the situation?
I don't have a quote for it, but it's basically, I've worked with a few really, really good leaders, and I think their ability to empower me, okay,
Mm,
and help me take it to the next step. I think that's what counts. So it was basically, their active listening to me, right? Their empowerment and their believability. And I sometimes, in public on LinkedIn, you'll find me saying thank you to them every now and then, and even on text messages to them directly saying, if it weren't for you, I would not have been here. If it weren't for these activities that you pushed me and you challenged me, right? And you understood
yeah.
my uniqueness of being, a female, a Saudi, young at age, very vocal, very adamant, and still having that ability to embrace all of what I had and deliver something. I think I'm appreciative to each and every one of them, to be honest with you.
No, that's really nice. It's really nice. Okay. Going to we mentioned this at the start, the quick fire round. So we've covered
Oh,
one or two of
yes.
these, so I won't do all of them. But I'm intrigued as a bit of a sort of takeaway. Though I think these are always useful. So leadership by example or leadership by delegation? What's your thoughts on that?
Okay, I think they both have different perspectives depending on the person. So there are some
Hmm.
people, there are some situations when it's leadership by delegation, definitely. Okay,
Hmm.
but throughout the course of my career, it's leadership by example. So they need to see how it's done and see that I'm walking the talk to be able to understand that it's leadership by example.
Okay.
But I enjoy
And would
both. I mean,
you? Yeah.
but
Okay.
I do delegate. Sorry, I do
Yes.
delegate.
Yeah. Oh, you always got to delegate. It's just getting that balance. Yeah. So we've sort of touched on this earlier, but big fan of formal meetings or casual catch-ups, and how do you get the balance?
Um, I think in today's world, it's not more formal. It's not very casual. So, for example, I embrace a lot, the one-to-ones and the team meetings, but they don't have to be, very formal and strict and rigid and and you haven't done this and you have done this. So you have to bring a very humane, fun aspect to it at work to be able to make it happen. But you have to have the rigid, formal parts of, has this been done? Has not this been done? What are we going to do here? What are we going to do there?
Okay.
So I think it's more
And
towards the casual than the formal, but with some kind of accountability there.
so next question. So would you go for long-term planning or agile flexibility?
Oh, that's a hard one. So personally, I'm a long-term planning person. I like everything to be done, specifically, especially in terms of me professionally. So also that I'm a long-term planning person. But at work, I've learned to be more flexible and agile. So yes, I think I'm a bit of
Hmm.
both on various aspects.
Okay. And we spoke about continuous learning, but are you a bigger fan of formal learning or on-the-job training experience?
I think it's on the job experience more.
Okay. Okay. And we've kind of spoken about this as well, but innovation versus traditionalism. And I know there's always a fine balance between this, but where do you see that you have to innovate but stay true to the traditional, but where's that balance for yourself? Where's that kind of sit?
Uh, I think it's more of innovation. Let's do things that are different, and then that's how I evolved. So it's innovation.
Okay. And moving towards the end of the episode, because again, we could talk forever, and I'm so glad we've caught up again. It's been far too long. But if you were to give a takeaway for people, so a soundbite at the end of the episode, as it were, what would be your one, two, or three takeaways for people in terms of if you can focus on A, B, C to develop yourself, or within HR, if you can focus on X, Y, Z, this will help the business, it will help your career. What would those kind of takeaway sound bites be for yourself? One, two, or three?
Okay, so in terms of HR, I think it's um, developing a functional expertise. It's broadening your industry acumen and business acumen, and finally building trusted relationships. So that's very important, right? In general, for people and for young ones and for those potential leaders, I think it's, in addition to what I just said initially as a functional expertise or broadening industry experience and knowledge and the relationships, it's being more resilient and adaptive
Mm,
and getting a mentor or a coach. It is very
yeah.
important for your development to continuously be able to evolve and grow.
Yeah, and I think they're fantastic takeaways for today. And I really love the mentor bit as well. It's something which at JOH we're looking at sort of formalizing some of that stuff as well. So you and I offline can have a few discussions on that for sure. But
Right.
from my side, look, thank you so much, Maggie, for today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Hopefully the listeners have got a lot to take away from this as well. I think there's been some great topics we've discussed. So again, thanks so much for your time. And yeah, we'll speak again soon. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Cheers.